Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Festival Fridays. Happy Friday, as they all say. We are back with another session for you. I'm so happy that all of you have now come into the session. I can see you all logging in at the bottom, which is wonderful. It's good to see you, and it's good to be back. We haven't done one for a couple of weeks, so thank you very much for giving up your Friday afternoons or mornings, as I know a few of you are from the US, and for those of my friends from Asia that I know registered, good evening, and what are you doing in on a Friday night? But we're very pleased to have you here. So we've had a few of these sessions already this year, and something that's come up with a lot of you and a lot of our brand readers and listeners is that they want to know more about what happens after the cookie disappears. Now, there's been a variety of conversations, a variety of discussions about the cookie disappearing, but I think you'll agree with me, there haven't been too many sessions about what the opportunities are and what some of the great solutions look like and what it means for digital advertising, and most importantly, how high impact creativity and data can take the place of the cookie and make your advertising even better. So to do that, we have two excellent gurus with us who you will see on your screen. Just to let you know before we start the conversation that, as ever, we would love your questions. So make sure you drop your questions into the Q&A or the chat, depending on which one you feel more comfortable with. But we will ensure that if it's right and there's a beautiful segue into it, we will ask it. Remember, this is an educational session, so we want to extrapolate as much as we possibly can from our two speakers. So make sure you get those questions ready. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce you to our two speakers. I'm going to ply them with as many questions as possible to get as much information from them, to get them going, to keep us all excited and in that learning phase for a Friday. Okay, our first speaker, and on my screen, he is in the bottom left-hand corner. I don't know where he might be on yours, but he is there. It is Simon Christ Gulshoy, who is the CEO for Adnami. Now, I hope I got that right. It's the first time I've read a Danish name. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you. I think you did it all right. We practiced a little bit before the show here, and this is perfect. It's the Christ Gulshoy, but never mind. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. Really appreciate the opportunity, and also to everyone listening. Thank you for tuning in to 30 minutes ish of data and creativity and technology. Amazing. And yeah, I'm Simon. I run a business called Adnami. Nami means wave in Japanese, and I'm sure ad you get. So we are based in Denmark. We are an advertising technology business. We specialize in everything around running high impact advertising. We standardize and distribute high impact advertising across the internet and offer services and products around anything an advertiser could and publisher could need for running high impact campaigns.
Fabulous, thank you, Simon. And joining Simon in the top left for me, I'm hoping he's in the same position for you, or maybe top right, it is James Florence, who is Head of Programmatic Strategy at Immediate Media. James, welcome. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
No, that was inevitable, wasn't it? Hi everyone, thanks very much for having me. It's good to be here. Yeah, I'm James. I work at Immediate Media. We're a publisher here in the UK. Have around about 87 million users and readers across a multitude of platforms, from kind of digital websites to magazines to events, and tons of other touch points, and working, owning some of the most trusted brands in the UK like Radio Times and BBC Good Food, and Top Gear, Gardener's World. So all of your kind of pandemic needs catered for.
Love that, James. Thank you very much. Well, let's get this conversation going. So I think a good place to start is, obviously, we touched on it briefly there. The pandemic has certainly changed things, and certainly changed things for not just consumers and their habits, but how we advertise and how we as an industry deal with that. What have we learned, do you think? I think a good place to start is, what have we learned from the pandemic? And, what can we take from that and bring into the future where it comes to advertising? What are the kind of key insights you guys have picked up and you're seeing, and how is that kind of playing out as we start to open up the world again?
I mean, certainly at Immediate, we've seen quite a dramatic shift in kind of consumer behaviour. We've seen a pretty massive growth in our digital properties. They've roughly doubled kind of year on year. Yeah, people have really engaged with our special interest titles, and they're really, wanting to consume that media about their passion and really reinvest that time in the things that they love. And also the content that they're viewing on those sites is shifting quicker than ever. So who hasn't sort of tried to become a home bartender, a gardener, made sourdough or banana bread or something? I mean, those are just a few of the trends we've kind of seen exploding out of nowhere on our websites.
Yeah, I can testament to that and support what you're seeing there, James. I think across all of our publisher partners, they're reporting back that they're seeing incredible increase on traffic. So it seems like there is a really big change in media consumption from traditional channels such as media and out of home and print and into digital. And advertising spend is typically following the eyeballs, right? So we also see that digital spend is increasing. And the other massive change or even transformation, I'd dare to call it, is what's going on around data. Also the topic of today, with browser restrictions and regulations, making it more and more difficult to both target audiences, but also to track them and retarget them. And this means advertisers and publishers need to come up with new alternatives to drive ad effectiveness. And an obvious focus for that is to focus on the creative and the quality of the creative within digital environments.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that, Simon. I mean, we've really tried to anticipate that for our kind of agency partners and our advertisers, and we've invested an enormous amount into our first-party data offering, IM Audiences, our contextual products, and now our creative platforms as well to make it just much easier for advertisers to work directly with us. Now that seems to be what will be required.
And really interesting points from both of you there, because I think, two things I picked up on there. One, that the whole piece of creativity is now, and surely must have become much more relevant to consumers, because there's so much choice and everyone has been kind of forced into the digital worlds. And some of the topics that you talk about there, James, from bartending to cooking, are very creative in their nature. So how do we as an industry now, and the things that we've learned from the pandemic, put that into the future of addressability? How does that creativity go in there? How do we make that data and that creativity piece work in a way that beautifully captures the audience and their attention? Because obviously everyone is trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, like, addressability is changing quite significantly. Will continue to change even further. There's probably 40 to 50% of the internet that can't be targeted at the moment, and that's not withstanding Google's changes. I mean, I think we've reached a bit of a high point in terms of targeting, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing for the industry and publishers. I think we kind of need to think a bit differently about what will replace it, rather than trying to persist the status quo. I think personally, publishers are in a great place to be kind of central to that. We've got exclusive access to incredibly rich first-party data about our audience. It's all consented and opted in. And it seems that stuff is going to be just impossible or much harder to access elsewhere. And we can, like, as you were saying, we can ally that and marry it up to our kind of really interesting creative environments to make a kind of a really compelling ad offering, I think.
Do you think, James, that advertisers have historically not been good enough at exploring the opportunities from a data perspective within publishers?
I think we've seen it getting better over the last year or so. I think publishers are seeing more agencies and more advertisers engage with our data offerings, just as they become more and more aware about the limitations of what's available in third-party space, and the way that that obviously misses a great swathe of Safari users. It has limitations around quality. I think people are just getting a little bit more discerning about what they're using now.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Simon. I really think that's really good. In terms of that whole piece about the advertiser getting into those kind of those real signals and those behaviour signals and really acting on them, because it's, I think one of the biggest problems the industry continues to have is having this data. And, from your perspective, James, as well, you've got this first party data. It's then actually, how do we implement it? How do we use it properly? How do we use it effectively? And this is not you, but a different publisher. I remember 2 years ago, and they have a whole different selection of magazines, and yet they hadn't quite worked out how to connect that, or think that one consumer might like more than one magazine in a different sector. I mean, simple things like that. But, are you starting to see now that obviously data now, and from an old traditional perspective of media, they're now switching their minds, and they're like, right, actually, we actually need to use data in a real and proper way. And Simon, you must be seeing a lot of that from your perspective.
I think the industry right now is trying to work out what's going to happen. I think that Google just announced that they're going to give us another almost 2 years to get our things tidied up, right? So my prophecy would be that in the next 12 months, we're probably not going to see massive change in the way things are being done. But I hope that all sides of the industry will not use that as an opportunity to stop and to pause the initiatives that they are currently planning and carrying out, because we need to shape up, all of us, around addressability and figure out what does good advertising look like in a world without cookies. That being said, I think someone like James is in a good position to come out on the other side of this in a stronger way, as context is becoming the new black again. A year ago, I thought, the industry is going to figure out alternatives with IP addresses or other means of targeting consumers, but it looks like that's going to be really difficult, right? I think context is really going to be gold in the coming years. I think it's important that publishers and advertisers work really closely together and maybe don't rely so heavily on the intermediaries and exchanges in between them. I was in a meeting last week with a digital director from I won't say the name of the agency, but this person said to me, I think that she thought that as an industry we're not even able to stick to status quo. We're definitely not moving forward in terms of addressability. We're stepping back. We're moving backwards in time and not progressing anymore. And I think maybe in terms of addressability, yes. But in terms of how we need to change as an industry, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think it's a needed change. I think the opportunity is here for all of us to really take a step back and think about how do we do this again. In the last decade, or maybe even more, we've been so obsessed or fascinated with the opportunities within. It started out as big data, and then it turned out just to be data because all data is big. And also technology with algorithms and graphs and AI and whatnot. And it's not that I'm a massive believer in tech. I run a tech company, but in all of this fascination, we've to an extent forgotten what advertising is really about. And it is, end of the day, it's about selling products. And what is selling products for advertising is the creative. It's the content that we put out to the eyeballs of the consumers that we need to think about. That's where we need to focus in the coming years, would be my prophecy.
Yeah, no, I love that, Simon, and that's really good. One point that came out of that was, what do you think is the biggest challenge to the industry making those steps and ensuring we don't go backwards? I mean, from what I'm hearing there, is education the biggest thing, kind of not just educating the advertisers, but actually educating the brands? Is education our biggest challenge, like a block to being able to educate people on this is what good advertising looks like in the new world, as opposed to what it looked like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a big shift, isn't it? It's quite a big shift in mindset. Instead of thinking about, like Simon was saying, that getting the best technology in place, it's about, where is the best place to put your ads? What are the best contexts? What are the best publishers to work with? How can I make the most eye-catching creative? It is a shift in mindset, and I think the whole topic can be quite off-putting and complex if you approach it, from what you can read around the subject online. I can understand why people are keen for ad tech to kind of just come up with a solution. to allow us to continue doing what we were doing, because it does seem impossibly complicated. But actually, I think when you kind of boil it down, it's not as unapproachable. I think these are the things that make good advertising anyway, and we just need to readdress how we do them.
I think there are also some fundamental challenges that we need to get across. At least on the digital, on the display side, the industry has been built to as a performance vehicle or performance driver for driving optimal CPM levels, for an optimal reach and click rates and viewability. Whereas I think if the pendulum is really swinging back towards context and back towards creativity, I think there are quite a lot of challenges that we need to come across. Formats, for example, many digital formats are not really they have been built not for the big great ad experiences, but more for driving performance metrics. Also features and capabilities within creatives is something where I see a lot of change and interest in that topic of what can you do from a content perspective within an ad. Does it have interactivity features? Does it have what video capabilities? That's a whole theme of a day for itself on its own. Also, I think the nature of the whole user journey is shifting a little bit because of this, because the click is no longer the ultimate goal of an impression, because you can't really track that user through the user journey. So what I'm seeing more and more is advertising asking us, what can we do something to flip that perspective, so we don't give the end user the great experience after the click, but prior to the click. So in the first impression, what can we move the content of the landing page into the ad, for example? Can we move the whole shopping experience into the ad? Can we have multiple products inside the same ad with feeds? So there's so many things happening in that space, which I think is extremely exciting.
And that's really interesting in itself, that piece of education around a click, because obviously so many people are just used, we had 55 clicks into this, that must be great, but actually you're absolutely right, you don't know where that customer journey has come from. So I suppose my question to you both in that perspective is there a new type or a particular type of measurement that advertisers should be using to ensure that they can identify that journey, and you can then say to them, well, actually we can do it like this, and this, and it means it has that whole creative path leading to the purchase?
I mean, I'd certainly say yes. I think we spend quite a lot of time with our ad ops team trying to basically shoehorn kind of be it CTR, viewability, time on screen measurements into these solutions that they're not really designed to measure. I mean, they're important health checks, obviously, but they should be a bit of a given for the kind of high impact advertising that we're talking about here. And I think that's where publishers can really step in. Obviously we've got that direct connection with the user at Immediate. We've got a huge panel of users that we can survey and ask questions to, and really delve into kind of effectiveness, brand uplift, perception, and that kind of stuff. We can use external, get those measurements externally verified. There's so many sort of exciting things you can do beyond measuring, was the ad viewed and how many people clicked on it.
I can comment on that as well. To make it, I'll make a clear statement that I don't think the current metrics are fit for purpose. If we're moving more towards a brand communication and value-driven, purpose-driven advertising in digital, then the goal is not the click and it's not the impression in itself. It doesn't really say a lot about the quality of the impression. Did that leave the consumer with a change of perception, or did it leave an emotional response in the user, in that person? There's a lot of maybe it's just inside my high impact bubble, but I certainly see a lot of discussion and a lot of research and a lot of content around attention. I think attention is a strong metric that will complement the typical the standard metrics very well when it comes to brand advertising. It's and that's a good thing. I'm not saying attention either is going to be the be all and end all metric to measure the quality of media, but it does give a deeper understanding of how well your communication impacts your target audiences. We've run some studies recently, and this is you can say, well, you are the sponsor, you're biased, but this is, we're seeing some very similar results from other players in the industry. Where we can see that high impact ads are driving up to 20x attention compared to standard display. So there's a massive difference when you're looking at the combination of context and formats and creative. That is really a powerful cocktail in driving attention. And also we've seen studies documenting that there's a very linear relationship between driving attention and driving towards real business KPIs, such as ad recall and brand preference, brand interest. So I think we definitely need to, if we're moving in this creative direction, we definitely need to also gear up when it comes to documentation to understand the real human impact or emotional impact of the ad, rather than just clicks and impressions and viewability.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. You know, some of these qualitative measures, actually, if you collect them in the right way, you do the right statistical analysis, they can be as powerful as some of the quantitative stuff. You know, we've seen, I mean, just recently working with Simon on a campaign for a big broadcaster. You know, they wanted to show off some of their on-demand content. Yeah, we worked with the content team for Radio Times to pick out the ones we knew would be most exciting for the users, rather than just a kind of random selection of whatever might be surfaced. You know, we really picked out the things that were really spiking at that moment, and we saw, you know, and we created a really nice kind of interactive carousel in the ad to keep users on the page. Yeah, and the dwell time was great. The interaction rate was above 70%. Yeah, it was a really rich experience. Yeah, but completely different from the kind of click-through based stuff that you would usually see on the site.
And that's great to hear. Really good to hear for the industry. And I suppose that leads nicely into, you know, you mentioned it, Simon, as well, with the attention economy and attention being one new metric that people should be paying a lot more attention to. What do you think are the big opportunities now for advertisers and publishers going forward? You know, we're going to lose the cookie over here. So actually, what are these exciting opportunities? Like, you know, James, you mentioned that the rich interactive content, which is brilliant, which is what we want to see and hear, and we've got the attention. What are the other big opportunities out there?
I mean, for us, I'd say exactly that. So for publishers, it's really about trying to create a loads of value, you know, add a ton of value for the advertiser, you know, and bringing that knowledge of content, the really rich and engaging environments, and kind of marrying that with equally rich and engaging ad formats. I mean, I think in the past and up till now, that's actually been quite difficult, you know, and we found that quite hard to do over kind of programmatic pipes. We only tend to offer it for our kind of most trusted kind of advertising partners. And that's why we've decided to work with Adnami, really, is to try and ease that process, make a bunch of templates and different creative types that we can offer via our agencies' existing programmatic pipes, that they can have kind of full control of, and we can on our side ensure that they appear right, and you know, they can activate our context and first party data on those deals.
I agree with all of that, James. I think
we're still speaking. Still speaking after last night, then that's good.
Was that a long pause?
Oh, after the football.
If I was supposed, or if I should try and answer that, I think this moment in time represents a huge opportunity, and I really think we should all try to grasp it. If we look at, and it's again, maybe it sounds like I'm banging on with the same message here, but I really think it's key to get this message across, that we need to do something different. We need to do a better job when it comes to building content for advertising. it's been reduced. Content, the typical creative that I see on the internet has been reduced to a wallpaper image, a call to action, and a logo. And that's really it. That covers about 95% of all ads that we see, all of us as consumers. I think that's just such a shame. So really the opportunity is to look at that. How can we make our ads be more entertaining, be more meaningful, be more relevant for the consumers? It is I think that is really what we need to do. And I think that's the biggest opportunity for all of us ahead. There's a I can follow up with why I think that. This is not a brand new study, but it is a big study that I'm referring to. It was done by McKinsey and Company and also Nielsen Institute. It was back in 2017. Many of you might have seen it, but it's documented the impact of different components around advertising, such as context and data and recency and the creative and the brand itself. And it found that what is by far the biggest contributor to driving sales from advertising is the creative. It's up to 60% of sales that is driven by the creative itself, rather than the other components. So if we were to focus on something which Google or Facebook or the browser gatekeepers can never take away from us, it's the creative executions. So let's do that.
That would be brilliant. I mean, that's exactly what you want. And you're right. I mean, I think we often forget as people in this industry ourselves how important that creative is, right? We're all consumers ourselves, so we all want to see things that engage and capture us and actually, you know, do that whole piece, like we said at the start, the going back to basics of marketing and persuading people to buy into a service or to buy into a product. That's the whole point, right? I suppose the question I have to come out of that is, in order to turn this around, and we've slowly touched on it as well, is just what's the biggest block you find? What's the biggest thing that an advertiser or an agency might say to you when you go to them and you say, actually, this is what you should be doing and this is going to deliver you this? What's the biggest block you're finding, and how do you get around that?
Well, from our perspective, because we offer bespoke ad format, something that goes outside the typical IAB standards, so skins and scrollers and full pages and lots of interactivity, etc. So from our perspective, we get the question, so but how do we build towards these specs? Because our creative agency is used to building just HTML banners that have a fixed ratio. So the creative build process can be a little bit complex. That's a pain that we're trying to take away from our clients. But yeah, other than that, I think many marketers they intuitively get it when they see what can be achieved with digital brand advertising, and like obviously I'm gonna want to do this instead of running what I did last year.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, James.
Yeah, I was going to say I kind of agree with that. I think I mean we see loads of briefs from agencies requiring a kind of creative response and wanting our newest, latest, flashiest formats, which is amazing. But I think at the moment there's a bit of disconnect between the briefing and what actually gets booked. And I think, you know, naturally these campaigns aren't always easy to pull off, and that creative side tends to go to, you know, more traditional kind of network routes. But actually I think, you know, using stuff like Anami, we could, you know, if we adopt these tools as a publishing industry, we can offer that scale and ease of access that maybe is the sticking point at the moment.
Which sounds great, and certainly the way that we want to go forward. I suppose it's that kind of amassing the troops, if you like, to kind of get that tsunami of people coming forward to actually make these things happen. Once, you know, as we tend to see here, and your point, James, to wanting the flashiest ad format and wanting to see it is just actually getting those people to do it, and then understanding, my goodness, this was a real game changer for us. And as soon as one person does it, you know, you get 3 or 4, and then it's, you know, 10 or 20, hundreds of thousands. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I suppose another question I have for you is, you know, we've touched on data, and, you know, digital is increasingly kind of becoming that channel for brand advertising. do we have the right data in place to ensure that it is effective? You know, we've talked about the formats, we've talked about the creative side of things. Do we have that data in place? You know, we touched on it briefly earlier, but you know, a lot of people like yourselves, James, have that data, and you, Simon, will have that data. But is it there to ensure that the advertisers get the right effective levels?
Yeah, we touched on it before, and I think my point of view is that it's not there widely accessible. It's something where you need to team up with partners to make sure that you get that level of documentation to really understand the true value of the media you're buying. Whenever it gets to qualitative metrics or attention, that is not something you're just downloading a report from your DSP, right? So no, but it's accessible if you work with the right partners.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think as publishers, we've got all that stuff in place. You know, we have amazing first-party data to do the targeting. We've panels and third-party partners who will do incredible things with measurement, but we're probably not as a programmatic sales team anyway. I think it's completely different in the partnerships world where they do an amazing job of it. In the programmatic world, we're just not good enough at getting that stuff out the door and showing it off to people.
That's interesting. So it's kind of almost like an amplification piece, James, actually trying to, you know, this is what we can do, this is what we should be doing, and getting in front of those clients in the right times.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's showing off our capabilities. I think, you know, we've been, for, you know, obviously rightly for ages, really concentrating on making sure the pipes are connected up and working correctly, and you know, we're making ads come on the internet and you know, making deals work as hard as possible. But you know, we're probably not as involved as an early enough stage to make sure we're getting the right targeting, we're getting the right kind of end campaign measurement in there, and letting people know about our capabilities in that area.
Great.
I'm thinking maybe I just want to make that clear if someone out there is thinking, hey, what does this mean to the whole programmatic landscape? Does it mean that we're taking a step back from that? Is that what the guys are saying, Simon and James? No, that's not at all what we are saying. The challenges that we're facing with data doesn't mean that technology is out the window, or that the programmatic buying that as we know it is going out the window. On the contrary, it's hugely important that we keep trading in those efficient ways. Like I think 95% of Vietnamese campaigns are being bought programmatically through PMPs or PGs, or sometimes even in the open marketplaces. I just wanted to clear that out in case there was any confusion around that.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm hopeful programmatic buying will continue. I completely agree. Yeah, I think it's just about changing the way that we do things a little bit, and where we get that data from, and who kind of owns it, and who are the let's have a look at where the value is being added in that supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's there, and I think what you guys are trying to say is actually there's other ways to look at how and why we do it, and to find those solutions which ultimately do the product uplift or the service uplift, and that intent to buy becomes much clearer. You know, ultimately doing what advertising is supposed to be doing. And on that note, I suppose one thing I'd love to ask you, and James, you touched on it briefly earlier when you mentioned that sometimes there's a kind of disconnect between client and what they want and what they get. What have you been noticing, and this is to both of you, from advertisers in terms of what their asks have been? Are they radically different to how they were pre-pandemic to how they are now in what they want from the digital advertising landscape?
I mean, from what we can see, it's changing slowly but surely. I think people are becoming more aware of you know, all the different hops in their supply chain, and they're wanting to kind of minimize that and to make more use of their kind of effective ad dollars with us, making sure more of that's kind of reaching the publisher, which is obviously we'd encourage. Yeah, so I think that we're kind of seeing a slow change in that direction, being a bit more aware of the importance of the provenance of the data that they're using. It's slowly but surely.
I think from my perspective, we're seeing that both advertisers and agencies have gone from a way of thinking about digital brand advertising as something that was on the plan occasionally, maybe those two, 3, 4 times a year, to a situation today where high impact and brand advertising is always on the plan. Like, if you can buy it programmatically and just as effectively as a standard display, why shouldn't it be on the plan if it's more efficient or more effective for you as a brand? So that's a change that we are definitely seeing.
And from a data perspective for advertisers, how important is it for those guys to come with their own, if it is a tool, with their own first party data as well to utilize with yours? Are you seeing a big shift towards that advertisers have kind of now really upped the game in terms of their first party data, and actually we want solutions for how we utilize this? I say this as the cookies are about to disappear, and the walled gardens are getting bigger. Is that the key now to advertisers, is kind of working with you guys to really grow there and help develop their first party data?
Yeah, well, we've definitely seen that. I think it's slowly but surely. I think the brands that are kind of furthest ahead have made sure they've got ownership of their technology and the data that they're, and have effective pipework to kind of get their data, make it available to us for targeting, to match it with our data in some cases. And I think we're seeing that's really going to be a really big trend for the rest of this year and probably the most of next year, just really allowing us to work more directly with that advertiser data rather than through intermediaries, because obviously we can kind of control the consent with our direct relationship with the user.
Yeah, we see the same trend that more and more, that rather than going through walled gardens, agencies and advertisers prefer to buy through programmatic direct channels where they have that relationship with the publishers, can leverage those in their media agreements, but also to carry out different data tactics.
We've mentioned creativity a lot and how you utilize that with that data. Do you think that marketeers need to have a little kind of rethink about how they use creative in the digital world? And obviously tracking and targeting is becoming more difficult. What do you say to brands when they suddenly see that and they're like, oh my God, we're not sure where we do, how we make this creative work? How do they approach that? What do they go back to their teams or their bosses and say, well, actually, we've got this new concept here. It's very different to what we've done before, but the reason we want to do it is because of X, Y, and Z. And the first question they may ask is, well, actually, we know how to track it over here, but you're suggesting something else. How do they do that? How do they change their creative ways?
It's not. I think they react being excited mostly about being made aware that these things are possible. It's not. This is not transforming the way they're used to buying media. It is evolving it. It's just thinking about that ad in a different perspective. We spend a lot of time educating creative agencies to build towards specs and understand the capabilities within this within our space of high impact advertising. And those creative people within those agencies are always excited about understanding, well, how can I do this within an ad? I didn't realize that. I thought it was just reduced to an image and a call to action and a logo. Can I really put interactivity in there, or what can I do this with video, or can it take all of that, take up all of that space on the screen, and how does a consumer interact with it? Like, I don't think you become a graphic designer or web designer to sit and optimize on file sizes to make sure that it loads quickly enough. That's not why you spend 5 years in university becoming a designer. You want to build cool things that really excites consumers and makes a true impact for brands. So it's being my experience has been that it's being very positively welcomed.
Yeah, I don't think it's any kind of radical thinking. I think everyone likes to work on those exciting kind of high impact campaigns. We just need to make it easier for them to do that. I think, if maybe if you're not kind of targeting to the nth degree in the way that we were previously, we need to work a little bit harder to get people's attention, and that means kind of engaging with their passions, making sure you're making that creative really relevant. We work with a big health insurance company on a couple of our websites over Christmas, which doesn't sound like a natural fit over Christmas, but actually it was a really cool campaign. We picked out a couple of their rewards offers that were going to be most relevant to our users, as they're looking for kind of healthy content and stuff post Christmas, and we were able to make those really match the content beautifully with a kind of series of interactive takeovers. So I mean, nothing kind of rocket science, but so much more kind of interesting for users than just a more generic message.
That sounds great, and actually it beautifully leads me on to this next question, actually, which is around different sectors. You mentioned health there, James. Are there any sectors, because I think one of the key things, particularly with our viewers who come into Festival Fridays, is they love to see kind of peer-to-peer. So is there any sector? I know we've got FMCG, I know we've got some alcohol brands, I know we've got pharma in the room here, but are there any sectors that are really kind of leading the way when it comes to using high impact, using creativity and data, that you think, wow, love working with that client because they've really got it? Or it could be a client, or it could be a sector, if you think there's one sector kind of leading the way.
I know I wouldn't say that at all. I think if we work across all sectors, this is not reserved to the PlayStations or the Nikes or the Coca-Colas, who all have a tradition for building really great content. I think our main sector is the automotive sector, and then followed by FMCG, retail, shopping, so and then I think and travel. So travel is coming back now, so that's good. It's easy for them to produce really appealing, beautiful content with pictures of a nice beach in Thailand or Mallorca.
I think likewise a lot of our experience is kind of filtered through the brands that we own. So we've done some pretty cool things in food, we've done some pretty cool things with various broadcasters and kind of TV type of companies, because they have that awesome video that you can showcase really easily. But I don't think it necessarily needs to be limited to those sectors. I think we can do cool things in most of our verticals and with all the kind of branded adjacent brands.
Yeah. Great. No, it's good to hear. It wasn't from a reserve perspective. It's just nice to think that actually, there might be someone who's leading the way, but it's good to hear there's a great mix and people are getting it from different sectors. So I suppose, look, I've been talking and asking lots of questions here, and bizarrely, we've gone through 40 minutes already. However, I would like to ask, and I see we've got a question from the audience coming in, but before I get to that, one thing I'd love to ask is, if you had to advise advertisers, what would you say are the key tricks or tips or insights that they should be exploring and looking at implementing within their campaigns as a result of this kind of changing world? What would you recommend?
Don't accept the norm. Don't keep pushing the boundaries of programmatic. Keep pushing the boundaries of what you can do with your creative, and try to rethink the user journey from where the ultimate goal is to get a user to click an ad to then go to some content. See if you can move that content experience into the ad itself. I think that would be my 3 tips.
Cool. I mean, for us, I think, everyone's kind of learning, experimenting and testing at the moment, aren't they? So I think kind of being open-minded to that is pretty important. To start that process of figuring out what works for your brand now, rather than kind of waiting, for Google to turn it off, because ultimately we're already down to about 40-50% of the internet that can be targeted now. So it's a problem at the moment, not when Google turn it off. I'd just be asking loads of questions about, what data am I being used? Where's it coming from? Where's my advertising being shown? We've done a lot of work with ISBAR on the transparency stuff, and I'm certainly looking at that where that media dollar is ending up and how much of it is getting to publishers, I think is a really interesting trend we'll hopefully hear more and more about.
No, great points, all of those, like those. I think it's certainly a evolving time in the industry, and it's clear that education is still a key point there when we're talking to people. It's clear that there are some really effective yet creative methods that advertisers can be doing, and I love think outside the norm. Absolutely. I mean, in everything you do, trying to be different, particularly now as eyeballs have trebled, quadrupled in the digital space from a consumer perspective. And then we had a really cool question actually from the audience. It was related to sectors, and someone has asked, are there any sectors that you are seeing growth in that has really surprised you in the digital advertising space, and any brands that stand out as embracing high impact?
A brand that stands out to me as embracing high impact is not. I was about to say Carlsberg. They do a really good job as well, but I wanted to say BMW. I think they have a really good tone of voice. You have great use of images and video. They have clear call to actions. It's very easy to decode the brand and the core messages. I think they do a fantastic job. There are many that do really good jobs. So I could mention 50, but in terms of sectors that stand out and that surprised me, I think the retail sector has probably surprised me a little bit. It's very, what we're seeing is that the high impact space is being used for very product driven communication. So weekly offers. So it's not necessarily the big brand purpose, but also for the more performance oriented strategies. These bigger and powerful, impactful formats, they still work. But another sector that's really surprised me is that is really local businesses, so small to medium sized businesses, where they have small budgets, both in terms of reserved for creative production, but also for distribution. But we see hundreds of campaigns from local auto dealers or supermarkets that run these types of ads because the cost of production has become reduced drastically. You don't no longer need 10 or 20 or 30,000 pounds or euros to deliver these. We work a lot with templates, to make it really cost efficient and fast, and it just removes that entry barrier for a lot of advertisers with smaller budgets. So it's good for us to see that's worked for us anyway.
Thank you, Simon. Much appreciated. And look, that once you get a few questions in, more come in. I promise this will be the last one because I know we're running over slightly, but it's an interesting one. So to both of you, I believe, how are you planning to engage with innovators and tech startups driving change in this sector?
I'd love to answer that. Can I start, James?
Go for it. Yeah.
We're doing a number of initiatives right now that I think are hugely exciting. We've teamed up recently with Lumen Research to also related to a question you asked earlier, Jeremy, on whether we have the right metrics in place and are we ready to scale that to understand the true quality of media distribution. So we're teaming up with Lumen Research to build out attention graphs that are specific to each of our formats, so that we can predict attention on future campaigns. So rather than having to have a big research budget that you have to throw after each and every campaign to understand this is something that can be estimated and scaled out on as many campaigns as you wanted to. I think that's a really exciting space for me that supports very much the questions that our clients are asking us. And I think it's both interesting from a more general benchmark perspective, but it's also interesting to do these graphs on a brand specific level. It's very different. Your attention graph will look very different if you are PlayStation versus if you're Nike versus if you are Tesco, because your content will be so different and the context will also be so different. So I think this is that level, that documentation space. I think a lot of things will happen there. And then secondly, we have some news going out. I'll be happy to break it to you as the first. But on Monday, the press release is going out that we've teamed up with another tech vendor called This to deliver really lightning fast video streaming of high definition or high quality video content inside high impact ad space. That has been also something that our advertisers and clients have asked us to do, asked us for advice on. So how do we make sure that we can deliver premium quality video in these big and beautiful formats without conflicting with browser limitations on heavy ads, latency, etc., etc., etc. So that's another initiative that we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we were one of those partners who were kind of asking that question, I think, and we had a look at a little sneak preview of the Seen This solution. It's absolutely great, just allow, especially for some of our broadcast clients on Radio Times, they can give us that HD video and we can stream it into a massive ad format without kind of bringing the page to a complete halt, which is obviously a really important thing for us. Yeah, I mean, I think we as a business could be better at engaging with tech startups. I think Simon will say that we can occasionally be a little slow moving, but we do have a good record of working, I think, with really innovative players in the space, and I get quite a lot of teasing from the team bringing various new Scandinavian technologies that I've uncovered in front of them. And I think, as a publisher, we get an enormous amount of value from working with those guys, because we can really think how that's going to work for our product, how we're going to get that into our thing, and vice versa.
Fabulous and great answers, guys. Absolutely brilliant. Look, we have gone over time. I appreciate people staying around and listening to it. I know it's a Friday. Thank you very much for your time. Let's have a huge virtual round of applause for James and for Simon. Thank you for giving us some wonderful insight here and looking at key trends for us. Some really great stuff. I'm happy if anyone wants to drop us a line to get in touch with James and Simon, as long as they don't mind, to ask further questions. We will put the video out next week as well and send that to everyone who registered, so feel free to pass that on. But once again, thank you so much, James and Simon, and thank you to the audience for being here. Wonderful to see you all, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks, Festival Fridays, before we break up for summer holidays, where hopefully the world will be allowed to go away. Thank you very much, everybody, and come on England on Sunday.
Come on England.
See you later, everybody. Have lovely weekends.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.